he has demonstrated his unwavering dedication in advancement of organizational excellence by introducing quality concepts for many organizations and individuals that resulted in a significant improvement in performance and customer experience. He received Subir Chowdhury Medal of Quality Leadership, Society of Automotive Engineers in 2019. Kush was with General Motors for over 37 years, and his last position was Senior Manager, Operational Excellence, with responsibilities of coaching and training top leadership to frontline employees in continuous improvement methodologies globally. Completed operational excellence projects have impact of over 1 billion globally. He has held leadership positions in manufacturing, ME, R&D, and quality functions. Kush has received the Chairman's Honor Award, People Make Quality Happen Award, Quality Driver Award, and GM Trade Secret Award. He has served in many leadership positions at the ASQ, including Director on the ASQ Board of Directors, the Chair of Automotive Division, and the Chair of Detroit Section. He has received the Distinguished Service Award from Detroit Section, along with the Court Award and Jarvis Award from the Automotive Division for his leadership and contribution to these organizations. He also received the ASQ Testimonial Award for his outstanding leadership and distinguished service to the society. Kush was recognized as an ASQ Fellow. He was selected to participate in the development of the first ASQ certified Six Sigma MBB exam, that is Master Black Belt. Kush is a preeminent quality professional who has applied his expertise to advance innovative application of quality systems and methodologies to diverse audiences as a mentor, teacher, and speaker. He has trained thousands of individuals at all levels of organizations across a variety of businesses globally. He has been a speaker at many global conferences. His contribution to improve healthcare quality has been featured in the Detroit Free Press. Before I hand over the dais to our distinguished speaker, I would like to inform the House that you can put up your questions through the chat box, and our very respected Commander Jetli Sahab is the moderator today, and he will have the last word on selection of questions, number of questions and whatever it is, and putting up to our distinguished speaker. Thank you so much. I now hand over the dais to our distinguished speaker, Mr. Kush Shah. Sir.
Thank you. Can I share my desktop? I'm not able to do it right now, so only can you make me as a presenter? Because I cannot share my desktop.
Yes, sir. Just a minute. So. Yeah. Sure,
so first of all, while we are getting the yeah, now I can. So thank you very much. And I'll go to the top of the presentation. And let me know whether you can hear me well.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
And you can see the presentation.
Yes, very well, sir.
So first of all, namaste, good evening. Thank you very much. I really feel very privileged to be part of this distinguished speakers sessions. And I really want to thank Subir Chowdhury and the School of Quality and Reliability. This is so great to hear that, Subir has not only done a great job of, developing new items within the United States, but also getting things done in India. So very proud of what Subir has been able to achieve. And so today's topic is about design thinking. And you may ask is why does the engineering person or a quality person needs to know about design thinking? So I'm going to really go over, why design thinking and what does it mean and how can you apply in and day out. So I'm going to be following the design thinking model from Stanford, and they are the innovators who really developed this design thinking process. And so let's kind of jump right in. So what is a design thinking? The first question comes in your mind is, what is a design thinking? And the design thinking is nothing more than human-centric approach to innovation. So we come up with innovations, but how do we apply the innovation so that the users can apply the innovations we have come up with? So keeping the person in the center of the innovations. It's not about coming up with the latest and greatest technology, because you can come up with the latest and greatest technology, but if it's not a user friendly, people will not use it. So the whole idea of the design thinking is keeping the user in the center of everything we do. So why do we do design thinking? In the current very competitive business environment, quality and engineering alone is not going to succeed. You need to combine it with innovation. And so it becomes a very critical part. Most of the organizations have that design thinking and innovation as a part of the quality organization or also with the engineering organization. It is a process which is really coming up with not just a theoretical innovations, but it is very practical and very creative innovations and keeping the user in the center of everything they do. So you may go and say, if the design thinking is so good, who is using it? And when you talk about any of the innovative company, one of the ones which you probably are thinking about is Apple. Apple has been using design thinking for many years. Bank of America, Boeing, I'm not going to read all the names to you, but as you can see, these are global companies which are not only using the design thinking, but they have included the design thinking into their corporate strategy. So this is very important that we look at how do we distinguish, and this is the opportunity I want to take to make sure that not only engineering and quality professionals, but they also learn about innovations and design thinking and apply that into their careers. So design thinking, when you apply it, you can improve substantially on the percentage of the innovations get implemented. So there is when I worked for General Motors, there was a huge R&D group, but how many of the R&D innovations really went into practice? A lot of that we are now moving towards, using the design thinking so we can go after and coming up with great innovations in our automobiles. I want to show you the impact of design thinking by a case study. So if you see this picture, can anybody relate to what kind of machine or what kind of equipment is this? I know people muted, maybe they're muted, they may not be able to speak, but this is about the MRI scanner. And if any of us have gone through the MRI scanning experience, it is not a very pleasant one because you are kind of put into very constrained space in a dark room, and then there is a lot of noises, and you are told to stay still in that environment. So this is the one with General Electric is making this equipment, and Doug Dietz was one of the key person who had worked for 2 years to develop the MRI scanner, and this MRI scanner was installed in one of the children's hospital, and just like any other innovator, he wanted to go and see his baby, his equipment, which he had spent 2 years, and he was hoping that people would be praising him for the equipment he had developed. So he goes to this children's hospital, and what he finds is there is a 7-year-old girl who had to get this MRI done, and she was crying, and the parents were saying, I know this is not really what you need to do, but this is really important, be brave. And then at this point in time, it was an aha moment for Doug Dietz because he thought people would love his equipment and it would be it's technologically most advanced. But instead of that, this little girl was crying. And this girl was saying that, my brother gets to go to the camp, but I cannot go. And because the kids have, even as an adult, to stay still while they do this MRI scan is very difficult. So 80% of the kids had to be sedated. They had to be providing some kind of anesthesia so that they can stay still during the procedure. And if any of us have gone through any kind of sedation, it takes a lot of time to come back to normal. And the parents' emotions were very bad for Doug Dietz to see. So he had not seen the human aspect. He had designed an equipment which has technologically was most advanced. So now in this case, here is the one where you really want this highly technologically advanced machine to be used to cure illnesses, and you want it to be applied, but this is causing a lot of emotions, not only for the kids, but also the parents. So how do you make it so that people would love to use this machine? And as an engineer, and I am a mechanical engineer, I've done master's at University of Michigan, and my mechanical engineering mind is I'll try to figure out how to reduce the noise, do all these other advancements to make this machine more user-friendly. Instead of that, Doug Dietz was trained in design thinking, so he's interpreted as how this life-threatening illness, because the kids are not in the hospital for fun, they have some kind of illness, and when they have these kids have this illness, it sucks the adventure out of life. So this is what he interpreted from that. And then he challenged himself. How do I make the hospital scan experience exhilarating and fun? So think about this. Not only just said that they go through it, but he wanted to make it fun for them. We could have spent, and Doug and General Electric could have spent millions of dollars to try to even modify the equipment, which would have taken time and money. But because he was really thinking it from this little girl's viewpoint, she really challenged, he challenged himself to kind of go and say, what can I do differently? So let me just tell you what was done. The same machine in the corner here, you see the old machine. This, all he did was put different stickers, different things, and this is he didn't come it the first time. He came up with this whole idea, talking to many children. And what he did was create this environment which was kids friendly. It included the noises, it included smells, sounds, and everything which people would love to have as a child. It reminded, so this was a pirate island. He told the kids, you are on this ship, you have to stay still. And then this, the wheel, it may kind of go around or do different things. They were going around, like make sure you don't fall in the water and all that. So he created that environment where the kids wanted to get their MRI scan done. And actually, if you can see the quote here, the kids not only not wanting to do it, the kid was saying, can we come back tomorrow? So here is the one where it started out with no child wanted to go through this experience. Instead of that, the children were enjoying the experience. And I can kind of spend a lot more time, but I'm going to move on to one of the other themes he did was a jungle adventure. One of the other MRI scan was more like a stapler, where this too kind of was not something the kids wanted to really see. And what he told them is, if you stay still, as this machine moves, he says the fishes will move around in circles. So this is a kind of innovation. And you may go and say, well, he really didn't change anything in the machine. But think about it as an engineer. It would cost us a lot of money and other things to modify the equipment. Instead of that, what he focused on was what was the experience the kids were having. So this is the power of design thinking, is coming up with an innovative solution to the problem rather than just jumping to the solution. So as an engineer, and I got exposed to design thinking about 7 years ago, and it has changed my life. I was a very black and white person. I thought everything rationally and didn't care about, all the soft side. I wanted to kind of look at the data, let the data drive the decisions. And this was something which really kind of opened my eyes to that. There's a Gallup did a survey, and they found that, and I talked to the vice president of the Gallup at that time, and he told me that Kush is a very interesting survey of, I think it was thousands of people, and emotions drive the behavior. 70% of the decisions we make are based on emotional. 30% are because of rational. How many of us have bought equipment with all different features which we never use, but it felt good? So we'll go and spend the money for emotional. You think about Starbucks coffee. Coffee used to be so cheap, and people are willing to pay a lot of money for Starbucks coffee. People are willing to pay a lot of money for Apple products because the Apple products and services, they are not trying to say how much better the coffee is. Most of the time, people cannot even differentiate the coffee between McDonald's coffee and Starbucks. It's more about the experience. So one very critical thought I want to really look at is, I'm not saying ignore the rational aspect, but keep in mind that emotional aspect is even more important with any product or service you design as an engineer or as a quality professional. So design thinking is more about mindset. It is not about just looking at the data, it's listen intently. As Doug Dietz listened to this 7-year-old girl and looked at her experience in design thinking, through the empathy, you are really listening to the user and not jumping to the conclusion. Because as an engineer, you bring me a problem and I'll tell you what the solution is. I don't need to go and talk to somebody else. I know best and I will do it. And that has changed now. Focus on what it could be rather than what it is. A lot of the changes we make are incremental changes. What we really need to think about is what is the breakthrough changes. So and we'll talk about the iPhone a little bit later on, but it is about breaking the tradition. It's not about incremental improvement, and think about what it could be and let your imagination go wild. Learn by doing. In design thinking, and I've taken GM executives to people online to everywhere, we don't go through like a 4 hours or 8 hours of just sessions of just one way of presentation. We have them do 1 hour of presentation and then go and do some empathy interviews. So you learn it by doing it. There have been executives who have been kind of put in the middle of nowhere and said, okay, now you go and talk to the people on the road. I have taken people from Italy, India, and other places as part of a program who came to Detroit and took them to the Detroit streets. My wife didn't feel comfortable about going on Detroit streets, but we took them out and they learned a lot by talking to people. So it's more about doing things. Focus on the user needs. It's not about what you are trying to prove or your design or your idea is the best. It's more about the user defining the needs and talking about ask why. Don't just go and say, oh, I like this thing. Ask, what do you like about it? Why do you like it? Don't try to do a sales job. So this is more about when Doug Dietz was working on different solutions. He did not say that this is my solution and all the kids should love it. It's more about when he put something, he asked the kids, what do you like about this thing? And that's how he created that pilot and the different kind of environment. Let ambiguity drive. So this is the other thing I like, more like a black and white person as far as wanting to know exactly what is my next step. What design thinking really is saying is that you may not know what the final solution is going to be, but go through the process. So these are the mindset. It's about changing the mindset, not about just arbitrarily following the process. So once I talked about the mindset, now I want to discuss what is the process which we go through. And I'll take a pause in case people have questions in the middle, but I'll go through this process and then I'll pause for a minute. So if you have any questions, please put it on the chat. So as I see the process here of the design thinking, it falls into the 4 different categories. So first is discover what the user wants. So this is, what is the product the user want? When and the iPad is an example, I like to use it. Everybody was happy with their laptop, but then Apple really tried to find what were the frustrations, what are the users wanting to have, and based on that, they came up with the concept of iPad. And when they came up with it, person who was more like a black and white person, I'm like, why would I spend $1,000 when I can buy a very good laptop which has all the same features for about 400, 500, half the price? And nowadays you can see every single kid here in US has an iPad. And the idea is they try to understand what are the frustrations with the laptops and other things from the users, and they designed a product. So first is empathy, understanding what the user wants. Based on talking to the user, you define what is the user value. And this is the important thing. It's not like what user wants, it's more about what user value. Henry Ford used to say that if I just ask people when, okay, what kind of car, what kind of thing would you like? They would have gone and said, I want faster horse. Nobody would have come up with a Model T car, which he came up with. So it's not about just asking what the customer or the user want, but what is the value which user is looking for. So come up with a solution which then nobody thinks about even as a user. So the next phase is the ideate. And this is where you really get your imagination wild and come up with a very innovative ideas about how to solve the problem which has been identified in the define phase. And then at the end is prototype, where you're going to build the prototype and then you're going to do the testing. As you can see on this one, that all these things are not on the same line. This is not a linear process. So design thinking, you may go all the way to ideate, and you may say, well, I really didn't get my user ideas before. So I may go back and do more empathy interviews. So this is not a serial process. This is also where you can move from one phase to another phase, and you can even go backwards to get more understanding. So this is the total design thinking process as it is defined by Stanford Design School. So I'm just going to take a pause. Any questions on this?
So we
Kush,
can have questions at the end.
Okay.
Kush,
okay.
can you please explain one thing that I think it will be really helpful if you can, how design thinking is connected with quality and reliability. If you can little bit explain, if you a little bit explain, because majority of the audience are from the QR area. So I was just thinking if you can a little bit connect that dot.
So my talk, the rest of the talk is about connecting that. Okay, so thank you very much for being the straight person to how I'm going to connect it. So now I'm going to take you through each of the phases, and then I'm going to connect with you on how does it go with the quality. So in the empathize phase, there is 3 ways to really kind of get the customer or the user empathy. One is observing the user. The other one is engaging, where you can interact with the interviews through the interviews, or kind of go and immerse into the experience. So when we talk about how does it apply to the qualities, to the bottom part of how do you integrate this empathize phase into your defined phase of a project. So as a quality professional, you're doing a 6 Sigma project and you are in the defined phase is concerned. I have seen people defined phase does not really understand what does the user want. So the empathize phase really helps you uncover the needs that the customers have. So the example I would give you about the automobile. So there is technology has changed a lot, but what really frustrated the customer was how the navigation system worked, how did the radio work, and they were highly technical, but they were not thought with the design, with keeping the user in mind. So when you look at JD Power Score or anything else, the quality issues, they were not complaining about an engine or a transmission, how they function. They were talking about, hey, this is a very frustrating experience. I cannot figure out how to make this radio work, or how do I make this navigation system work. So integrating this empathy phase in your define phase is very, very important, because now you are focusing on a specific user and customer. So when one of the, and I cannot, because I retired from GM, I cannot give you the GM examples directly, but this is where when we, as a quality professional, we are really looking for what does a customer, so we talk about Kano model and all that. This empathy phase would help you to understand, are you addressing the critical needs of the user or the customer? So that's why how the empathize phase is aligned with the define phase. Does that help a little bit, Subir?
Yes. Yes.
So I'm currently working on a project outside where Oakland Schools, which is a school district here in Michigan, they got from taxpayer millions of dollars to update the schools. In the past, the administrators sitting around in a conference room would have decided what kind of improvements we should be making in the school. Instead of that, they have reached out to me, and we are using the design thinking process. And this is how it is different, where I'm interviewing the school children, I'm interviewing the teachers, the support staff, and also the parents to really understand what are the requirements and what are the things they would like to see in the school. And going through this empathy process, and this is a chart which I kind of shared. We usually give a lot more detail on this one, but just giving your appetite whet here is the difference on the design thinking empathy interview is, and this is how you can incorporate, is not ask about yes, no questions. It is about talking about stories. What is frustrating to them? What excites them? And some of the insights we got from the empathy interview was mind-boggling for the administrators, because we went back and said, this is what your school children, here's your staff, here is what teachers want, and they had no idea. So this is how the empathy interview really helps you to understand what the customer or the user wants. So here is a kind of a test, and if you see this person walking in the water, and this is where, you know, we as a quality professional, we see something and we immediately think we know what the problem is. So let me ask you this: if you see this person, what do you think this person needs? And because people may be muted, I'm going to say I've heard more of the, when I do more face-to-face, they will go and say, this person needs an umbrella, or that's the immediate solution. As a quality professional or anything else, we'll kind of go and say, you know, I have seen a problem, I'll tell you what the solution is. The reason why this is a trick question is the only person who can tell you what that person needs is that person himself. So we as a engineer or quality professional will make a decisions, and we think we are addressing a problem without ever talking to the person. So this is how the design thinking can help you in the define phase of your Six Sigma or IDDOB project. So once you have done the empathy, interview, and then staying still with a defined phase. When you are coming up with a problem statement, you want to make sure that the problem statement and the project objective of your Six Sigma project is based on what are the hearts and minds and just not on the hard facts. We'll go and say, we know there is a scrap is this percent, we want to improve the scrap percentage, or there is a certain percentage of warranty. It is not about just how much is it costing you, what kind of pain does it cause to our users. And this is where it is very important that we really define the problem in a very clear statement with respect to not only addressing just the hard facts, but also what can we do to the soft side of the user. So when somebody comes in and says, people are complaining about elevators are too slow. So if somebody is a quality professional and as an engineering person comes in and says, okay, what would be your usual solutions to this problem? Make them faster, some other make them faster, add more elevators, decrease the number of people per elevator so the weight is less, then they'll go faster. These are all the engineering and the solutions which people usually would think about. Every one of this is going to cost you more money and redesign and other things are concerned. So when you're thinking about how do I solve the problem, if as a quality professional, all you take their word that elevators are too slow, all your emphasis is about making these changes. What design thinking is saying is, think about it a different way. How might we make the waiting experience feel shorter? You may not go and change anything on the elevator speed. How can I make this experience feel shorter? So when you think about it that standpoint, the solutions you would come up with is to say, how can I distract the riders from the wait experience? So this is where, if you go to a lot of high-rise buildings, they have more about where you can look outside view, where you get kind of, it becomes an okay experience from that standpoint. There are mirrors where people want to kind of look at themselves and make sure that they are looking good before they go into the office. There is a music. All these other distractions are happening to create that experience so that you may not change anything physically in the elevator, but you are really changing the experience. So the design thinking is about coming up with the solutions, not necessarily to address exactly what the customer is complaining about, but what is the true, what is underneath, not looking at the symptom, but looking at what is the issue itself, and then coming up with a solution for that. So this is the difference between the traditional and the design thinking way of looking at the problems. So in any problem solving or in quality, there is a improve phase, and this ideate phase is very much aligned with the improve phase. And what it really talks about is, how do I come up with the solutions? And when we do the traditional solutions, we are thinking about just incremental improvements and not thinking about large quantity of ideas and getting all the ideas together. And the example I like to give here is about the phone. For many, many years, the phone looked, there were incremental improvements which were made to the phone. Before, you had to have the wire where you had to be tied down to wherever your phone was located. Then it became like instead of having that dialing, became the buttons. Then it became lighted buttons and all that. What you really see is that when the iPhone came, they did not make incremental improvements. They did not go and say, let us just improve a little bit. Let's make this buttons bigger, or lighted, or let's do this. They looked at the iPhone as a totally different way. And this is where the diversity of ideas and the quantity of ideas become very important. I've seen Six Sigma projects where the solutions they are coming up are incremental improvements. And what design thinking is talking about is, let's talk about breakthrough improvements. Let's not kind of talk about just incremental improvements. So this is the ideate phase is very much aligned with the improve phase of Six Sigma, or also developing the ideas in the IDDOB. So when we talk about brainstorming, it is about building on each other's ideas. Design thinking, they don't allow people to say or criticize ideas. So we really talk about this culture of yes and rather than yes but. What happens as an engineer, I'll come up with a nice idea and then I'll take it to somebody else, and then the other engineer may go and say, yeah, that's a great idea, but it is not going to work because of this reason. So instead of just saying yes, but, what the culture we really want to drive is about yes and. Never defer the judgment. The judgment comes later on. We go for the quantity of ideas and come up with the wild ideas. How can we, when we are working on a quality problem, how can we come up with the solutions which are not just incremental, more about breakthrough and having a fun with this thing. So we'll talk about in the next phase, which is a prototype, which is way different than what we as a quality professionals are used to. I have 25+ years of quality experience, and I will tell you, when Subir was asking about, I have incorporated this design thinking approach, and actually one of my last project, by implementing design thinking and integrating that with data, we were able to generate $40+ million of additional business for General Motors by not just looking at the data, but looking at the data and talking to the users, and we are able to generate that kind of more revenue for General Motors. So now we are talking about the prototype phase. So again, we are talking and interacting with the improve phase of a Six Sigma project. And design thinking, the way it is different is shown by the picture on the right hand side. And I'm just being careful about the time here also. And what we try to do, and as an engineer, when I come up with an improvement, I come up with a very great, nice looking prototype and try to prove that my prototype is really good. What design thinking is really teaching you is, don't spend too much money and time creating a prototype. Create a low resolution prototype and then learn from what when you go and do the testing, you'll find different things, and you continue to evolve your prototype rather than making a prototype. Because here's what happens. If you create a prototype where you have spent a lot of time on, and then somebody does not like your prototype, what do you do next? You try to convince them that you have a great idea and they just don't appreciate their, your best idea. So you try to be a salesperson and you try to prove it to them because you have invested a lot of time and money in creating the prototype. So design thinking is not about proving that you are good. The big aha moment which I had is, it's more about learning and reduce the miscommunication, start a conversation. And this is where the failing was. If as an engineer, if I fail, as a quality professional, I fail, I don't want to fail. But here in the design thinking, we want to fail quickly and cheaply because we are not spending so much time and money on your prototypes. So when you are in the improve phase of the project, you really want to make sure that you are applying this and manage the solution building process where you are going to iterate from one prototype to the next prototype. So the example when Apple and other organizations start developing the apps before they come up with this fancy app, they really actually go and write up how the different functions of the app work by paper. And they basically take this kind of a cardboard model and they take it to the users and say, okay, what about if you click here? And if you click here, this is what it is going to show up. And then the user is going to say, do they like it or not? Because if you spend 6 months developing this app and then people don't like your app, you are not ready to convince that it was a bad idea. Here, because I'm doing it on a piece of paper, it's a low resolution. So when I'm talking about design thinking, always promotes the low resolution prototype to start out with, and then it's going to a high resolution. And let's talk about, and I cannot go into details, but I'm working as a consultant right now with one of the automotive OEMs on one of their biggest problem. And as a quality professional, when we are walking through the data, they are like, oh, we are convinced that this design is going to improve the quality substantially. And this is where, and they were like, okay, we are going to go across the board and apply that. And I had to kind of stop them. Let's try it out. Let's really do a very small pilot. Let's do it at low resolution. Can I make something up pretty quickly? And can I test it out? And when we tested out, it did not work. So this was very important that if they had gone full-fledged with these changes, and if it would not have worked, it could be a lot of money spent. So this is so important that you go from low resolution to the high resolution. And the last phase of design thinking is about testing. So when we come up in a problem solving, we do the pilot, and I've seen pilots are not done with all the different shifts. If it's a manufacturing with all kinds of users. And here in the testing, you are really refining your prototype, learning more about the user, and continue to interface with your user and stakeholders. So this is where it is very closely aligned with how the quality professionals can use it for ideate, prototyping, and testing phase. So that when you are testing, this is the other thing which is the design thinking does differently. In quality, we talk about this bell curve, and we think about focusing on the middle of the population, which is 60 to 80% of it. What we want to be able to do in the design thinking is to look at the extreme users, the tails of the distribution, if we want to call it. And I have a very simple example for that. So here's a one about pizza, and I've done training all over the world, and pizza is, I love pizza, I can eat every day, but my wife won't appreciate that. But so one of the things which happens with pizza is the cutting tool. It has a sharp edge, and so most of us usually can do it. Who do you think would have a problem with this tool to cut the pizza? So again, it's not, I cannot, and this is the disadvantage of, not able to have that interaction. But what happens is the sharp edge is an issue with children. And this tool has an issue where if you are an elderly person, where you cannot cut it straight line. So when you look at this tool, people said, okay, how can I look at user in mind, and how can I develop this tool? So they came up with two ideas. One is this for the elderly people, where they can handle the sharp edges, but now they don't have to worry about whether they are taking the small tool across the pizza properly. So this is where they've done that. And then they have also developed the tool on the right side, which is more for the kids. And that way they don't touch the sharp edge. They hold on to the plastic cover to apply that. So this is where I wanted to not only talk about the theory, but also practical approach about how do we think about innovation in quality and in engineering. So I'm going to end with this learn some going through the 5 phases. Always keep the user in mind. So in a defined phase of quality project, you want to empathize and define with user in mind. When you are developing a solution, think about the wild solutions and ideate and really kind of go the brainstorming on steroids and not just talk about incremental changes. Once you have come up with a solution, make sure that you start with a low resolution prototype and then also test it, and you want to fail fast, and I call it fail forward. So the failing is a very important part. If in design thinking, if somebody comes up with a solution, and I've taken many different teams through this one, if they come up with the first solution and they say everybody loves it, then I say you failed, because there is not, you didn't really get the true testing from the user. So what the idea here is, you want to fail fast and you want to fail often, and at the test you will come up with a very good design of the product or service. And this is something which has been incorporated into the strategy of many organizations. And I just was looking at the time, so making sure that I'm ending up on good time. So I provided my email address. You can connect me if you have questions, and if you cannot get to all the questions. And then also, connect me with on LinkedIn. I'm right now, my goal is to spread the word. I'm working with different organizations, even nonprofit, to apply the design thinking process for problem solving and bringing the quality professionals and innovators together. So I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Kushji. Now I request Commander Jaitley, please take right.
So one question is from Subir Kumar Patra. The question is, sir, has design thinking been integrated into DFSS, that is Design for Six Sigma, and TRIZ, TRIZ, TRIZ? I don't know what is that.
Yeah, I know the, so let me just kind of answer the first with the DFSS. It has been integrated, and so if you are using the IDDOV framework, I actually should have put a slide. What I'll do is I'll share the slide with the team, which you can forward it to the attendees. But what I really show is how the design thinking is integrated into the Six Sigma and Design for Six Sigma. So that's, so yes, it is integrated into Design for Six Sigma. As far as the TRIZ is concerned, TRIZ is, just in case people don't know, this is about the the Russian inventor who looked at all the different inventions and came up with some like 40 different ideas, which he was able to kind of get it out there. That is one of the tools we use. So the TRIZ is used during when we are doing the ideation. So TRIZ is one of the techniques we use in ideation. So yes, we do use that.
Next question.
I should not go through everything in 1 hour, sorry, but good question. Excellent question.
Next question is from Vikram Kumar Gupta. He wants to know that how effective can be the design thinking approach from sustainability point of view. For example, I want to convert my old conventional vehicle into battery powered vehicle.
Yeah. So you're talking about sustainability. So
design
we
thinking,
have,
yeah, because design thinking from old to, because the old structure remains as it is. So he's just converting his old vehicle into battery driven vehicle.
Yeah, so let me tell you, design thinking is not a silver bullet for everything. So design thinking, I would say very honestly, may not help you to convert your old one into that one. But then what we did, and I'm trying to be described to you, is when we are moving to the EV vehicle, what design thinking really helped us to see what the people who wanted the electric vehicle were really looking for. So what has happened is people were looking for more fuel efficiency. So not about thinking about, oh, I want to convert my vehicle into the electric. I cannot do that for you with the design thinking or just change it. But what we really did was understand what people were looking for. So what you would see a trend in the automotive industry, listening to the design thinking, is that people have now gone. So once upon a time, the 8-cylinder engine, or more powerful the engine, the better it is. What you have seen is all the automakers are now going to a more and more fuel efficient engines so that they can kind of be more sustainable and less fuel is used to help the environment. So those are some of the things where once upon a time everybody was trying to go to a bigger engine. Now we are going to smaller engines. Go ahead.
So now one question is from my side.
Yes.
You know, many times the users, you made a statement that focus on user needs rather than what we want.
Yes.
So many times it happens, the user is ignorant about a particular thing totally altogether. So then we give him something. Like before the computers came, the user never knew that there could be something like computer, a normal user I'm talking about. Similarly, we have a mixer in our kitchen today. Probably a person some 50 years back, he never thought about a mixture. He was very happy with, you know, that wooden one breaking the thing and making chutney and all that. So, but some electrical chap, he thought there could be a motor and it could be, you know, do the whole thing very easily and sharply. So it was not the want of the person, but yes, the user was told, hey man, here can be something better. You can do a job in a much better way. And then he got it.
Yeah, so I think you're asking a very good question, and I think I tried to address it before, because I said when Henry Ford was saying, if I just rely on the user, they would have said, give me a faster horse. Nobody would have said it is a car. What design thinking is not saying, tell me what equipment you want. What if somebody would have gone and looked at it, you would have said that, well, I want to reduce the amount of time. So what you are looking from the user is not to tell you, I want this machine or I want this thing because they would not know what that thing is. And that's not how Apple uses. So for example, how design thinking was used from going from computer to the iPad, they asked the person, what frustrates you about the laptop? And the person said, hey, it takes too long to boot up my laptop. The second thing is it's not a portable. And then I want to be able to have where I can just push, not where I have to go in a keyboard. I want to be able to have where I can just select what I want on the screen. So they didn't go and say, I want an iPad. But understanding what the customer wanted, what are the needs, what are the things which frustrates, or what are the things which excites them, that information was used then to create a product. Does that help?
Yeah, great, good.
Sir, can I take this opportunity to ask just one question, sir?
Sure.
Sir, how is design thinking different than QFD, sir? Quality function deployment.
Yes, so I'm familiar with the QFD also. I would say is that the QFD is a great tool, but QFD is also very much sitting in a conference room, understanding what are the needs, and then going into the relationships and everything is being done. And it takes you over 6 months, and I've done a simple once, and it has taken a long time to fill out the whole house of quality. What design thinking is talking about is go out, try something out. Don't spend 6 months developing something, and then you may find people may not like it. So what the way the design thinking is different is more about focusing on experimentation and not trying to come up with the best solution sitting in a conference room.
So in QFD also it is customer driven. I mean, you have to go out to get customer feedback. Without customer feedback, you cannot benchmark, you cannot do anything without customer feedback. You have to take the survey. In design thinking also, you have to go out, take the customer survey and feedback, everything, sir. But in QFD, sir, you have a more organized fashion where you are able to find out the benchmark and then you are also able to find out the technical house, how to achieve that benchmark. So actually, it is both, sir. Like as you said, that it is not giving you the actual. I mean, you don't have to create a lot of technical things also, but at the same time, it is also giving you a scope to experiment also. Like it can be integrated with DOEs, it can be integrated with other tools also, Six Sigma
Absolutely.
tools, DOEs, and everything. So that's what, sir. So how it actually is different. I mean, not able to make out, sir. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So again, I'm not putting down the QFD because I've done it and it is very helpful to start with what the customer wants are, and then looking at how you're going to meet it and what is the benchmark associated with it and how interact with each other. What I find is, and I would tell you that I was trained in QFD in 80s. And I would tell you in my 37 years of career in GM, I would say in the last 25 years, people are using parts of the QFD, but not going through the total QFD process because it is considered to be very painful and not necessarily very practical. So I'm just telling you from my experience is that I still believe in QFD too. But I would say that this design thinking, we have been able to incorporate with data. So this is the one which I don't agree with the total design thinking group people because they would totally throw away the data. And I think that's where I'm completely aligned with what you are saying. I have, and that's where my kind of initiative is going, is to combine the data and the soft side together rather than just saying either or. So there are a lot of good things QFD is bringing. How do we incorporate QFD and design thinking together? I understand in the QFD you go and do the customer needs, but those are more like a questionnaire. You never get into the depth. If you do an empathy interview, you'll find that empathy interview is so much different than asking people to fill out a survey or ask a series of 10 questions. Empathy interview, when I start with the interview, I may not know what are the exact things I'm looking for. I'm letting the conversation go wherever it needs to go. And it may take me in a totally different direction. So that's where some of the difference.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. So end of Q&A session. May I request for vote of thanks, please?
Thank you, sir. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Professor Tiwari, Director IIT Kharagpur, and Sri Subir Chowdhury, sir, Chairman CEO ASI Consulting Group, LLC USA, for providing their kind blessings. I would also like to thank Professor KB Misra, sir. No, he's an internationally acclaimed academician and library guru and founder of erstwhile REC, for his everlasting blessings, and Mr. Kush Shah, ASQ Fellow, for delivering today's talk as a distinguished speaker. I also extend my thanks to Commander VK Jetli, Chairman C-Cube Consultants, New Delhi, and Member Advisory Committee SCSQR, for being QA moderator, and Professor Pradhan for his kind presence. Last but not the least, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all participants and Team SCSQR for their continued support in making this event a grand success. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Kush Shah ji, so nice of you. Thank you very much, sir. It's really nice meeting you. Subir da, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.